And now it's part of the health report where we open up the mailbag, and joining me to help with this very important job is health report producer Sarah Sedgey. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
Where can people email us if they want to ask us a question?
That's right. So if you've got a question, just email us through on healthreport@abc.net.au. And we have a few questions to get through today. So Tegan, the first one is from Kusaji, and she's emailed in and says, "Love listening to you every week. I have a question regarding body hair. Is removing body hair frequently a bad idea? And are there any studies reported on the effect of body hair, having it removed, whether it causes skin cancer?"
Oh, such a good question. And it allows me to kind of delve into a bit of evolutionary biology, which I love. So, I mean, if you think about it, humans are kind of weird in that we have not very much hair, but we actually have about the same number of hairs as other primates, great apes, but they're smaller generally, except for the ones that are like on our head and like our eyelashes and our eyebrows, and of course our pubic hair. So like, let's talk about it. So we don't have a lot of hair because it suited our ancestors to be able to sweat more than the benefits of having fur and hair, like to keep us warm. And it probably also helped us to not have as many parasites. But then, of course, like we've got this pubic hair, which is kind of weird, and maybe it has a function to sort of like trap smells that maybe smelt sexy to our ancestors and that we very like carefully wash off these days, or maybe it stops us from chafing. There would be an evolutionary reason for it. But of course, Kasaji's asking about like, if we take the hair off, is that a bad thing? I guess the first thing I would say about that, like from an evolutionary perspective, is we do a lot of things today that we didn't like evolve to do, things that might have been an advantage in the jungle that just like don't apply today. Like, for example, we wear clothes, which replaces hair in a sense, the way that other animals use it. We also bathe a lot, which kind of negates the whole thing about like maybe if sexy smells were part of the reason why we have hair, then that's gone. And we also like watch a lot of Netflix. So in terms of taking the hair off, there does seem to be like evidence that like if you're bald or your hair is thinning, that you're at an increased risk of skin cancer. So if you're shaving your head, or some people don't have hair and that they don't have much choice about it, you need to be more careful about skin cancer on your scalp and also other places. But the skin cancer is most likely on the places where you get a lot of sun exposure. And then laser hair removal, involves light going onto your hair to sort of kill that follicle. But it doesn't use the same wavelengths of ultraviolet light that we're worried about in sunlight. So the UVA and UVB isn't in the lasers that they use for laser hair removal or in intense pulse light hair removal. And that sort of light is actually used for other medical procedures, including to treat skin cancer. So the Cancer Council says people who have a history of skin cancer or atypical moles should be cautious about laser hair removal, but there doesn't seem to be any reason to avoid laser hair therapy. And I couldn't find anything linking like skin cancer to just shaving or waxing. So Kasaji, I think you can wax shave, laser hair removal or not, however suits you and your personal tastes.
How interesting.
So much fun with that. So one for you, Sarah. Gilda is asking about very young children and vaccine trials. We want vaccines for little kids, but what are the ethics and how does it work when you're using kids in clinical trials to find out whether they can benefit from the vaccines that we need evidence for them?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing to say is currently we don't have a vaccine approved for under 12s. They're still in the clinical trial phase. So looking, I guess, at how these trials work, I guess it might be best to look here at the example of the Pfizer vaccine because they seem to be more progressed in their paediatric trials.
They've been doing them for a couple of months now, haven't they?
Yeah, that's right. So with trials, with clinical trials, there's different phases. So you have your phase 1, which is an initial safety trial, and it also helps to determine what's the safe dose here. So with the Pfizer trials, for example, there are different trials going on for, they break up the age groups into different cohorts. all of those trials from babies 6 months of age up to kids 12 years, they've all progressed from phase 1. So they're now either in phase 2 or phase 3. So getting that right is really important because, as we know, children, they're not just little adults. There's differences in their immune systems, for example. And one interesting thing they found is that for kids sort of in that 12 to 15 years bracket, their antibody response seems to be much bigger than the next age group up. So there's the implications there for dosage. So basically, back to the Pfizer trials. They've now progressed to the pediatric trials are now in phase 2 or 3. So now they're going to be really looking at, understanding the safety, identifying any side effects, and importantly, seeing how effective these vaccines are. And so if that is all determined and if it is proven to be safe and effective, what then happens is that data will be submitted to regulators in different countries to consider for approving it for use. So here in Australia, that's our TGA. They'll have to make that decision when the time comes. So Pfizer are hoping to have that data available quite soon. In terms of ethics, clinical trials, they do have to adhere to ethical guidelines as well as codes of conduct. And the parent and as well as the child should hopefully be given the right information so that they can make an informed decision and give consent to participating.
Yeah, so you could do that with an 11-year-old maybe, or, a 9-year-old, but how do you do it with the young babies? Like, it's so important for us to get this data, but I guess then it just rests with the parent to have that informed consent.
Yeah, I think, the age definitely comes into it because obviously you can't really have that conversation with an infant, but it is so important that the parent is informed and is able to give informed consent if participating is what they want to do.
As a parent, I feel so grateful to these people who are sort of putting them, in adult clinical trials as well, but especially with kids, I want to protect my kids. It's just, I feel so grateful for these people who are giving us this data so that we can then make informed choices about what we do with our own kids.
Yeah, and actually on that, something to point out is that Moderna, which has an mRNA vaccine, so that's the same technology as the Pfizer vaccine, it's actually looking at Australia as a potential place to hold clinical trials for their paediatric COVID vaccine trials for babies 6 months through to kids aged 12. So that's up to the TGA to approve if they go ahead and make that application, but there could be trials here soon potentially.
Oh, well, maybe I should be one of the people myself now that I've said that those people are so awesome.
Okay, Tegan, so we've got another question, and this is from Susan. She's written in saying she's immunocompromised and points out that there are many others in the same situation as her in Australia. She's concerned about being able to produce enough antibodies through COVID vaccination, given that she's immunocompromised. So she and her GP have been discussing potentially a third booster shot. Now, this is something that authorities in the US have recently made a decision on.
Yeah, that's right. So in the US, very recently, like in the last week or two, the Food and Drug Administration there, the FDA, has amended their emergency use authorizations, which is what they're using to authorise the vaccines there at the moment. So both the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna, they're allowing additional doses for certain people who are immunocompromised, but it's quite a specific group. It's people who are solid organ transplant recipients or who have conditions that are considered to have an equivalent level of immunocompromise. So in the States, the Centers for Disease Control says that's probably less than 3% of adults. And France has done a similar thing where they have given a third COVID vaccine to people who are immunodeficient. So your body's immune system works by the whole reason why we give a vaccine is to kind of give your body that wanted poster to sort of be like, if you see this guy, kill him. And sometimes you need to show the immune system a couple of times for it to recognize it. And especially if your immune system is already weak or compromised in some way, which is what we're talking about here, that they need a couple of reminders so that they can mount that effective immune response if they do face the virus. So the US has done it. France has done it. I don't know if in Australia that's something that is being approved yet or what the approval is. At the moment, I think all of the approvals are 2 doses a certain number of weeks apart, depending on the vaccine. But it'll be really interesting to see what that advice is for that specific group of people down the track, like Susan, who's written in. But also we have already got plans to give people boosters, everyone boosters in the coming year. 15 million doses of our Moderna purchase is for booster vaccines next year and beyond. So whether that's something that's fast-tracked for people with immunocompromise or not remains to be seen. But it's a really interesting space.
Definitely. So if you have a question that you want us to tackle next week, please just send us an email, and that email address